last session of the conference. I'm Tad Giles. I'm currently the CTO, but I'm the former general manager of the Kuali Build product. Build's my baby, and we've all been discussing my baby all week long. Isn't that beautiful? So I want to, first of all, I want to express some thanks. We've had so many different customers participate as panelists and do presentations this week, and I want to thank all of them. I honestly, personally, for me, there is literally nothing better in my professional life. I have grandbabies. So if there's nothing better in my professional life than listening to customers talk about what they've been doing with the product that I've helped create. And it's just been super fun for me personally to listen to all these stories this week. And I appreciate everyone who's participated in that and the time and effort you put into preparing for that. Thank you. Thank you. I also want to call out some people on the Kuali side. Annie, Brandy, Katie, and Shannon are like the magic that's been happening behind the scenes to make all this possible. They have put a ton of effort into just making this go as smooth as possible and creating this experience for us. And we're extremely grateful to them as well. And finally, I want to say thank you to you for participating and being here with us. We know you have lots of things to do, and we know this is a sacrifice to be here with us. And we appreciate the time that you're spending with us, and we're grateful that you're here with us. So let's talk about roadmap. As we talk about roadmap, I want to kind of set up a little bit. First, I want to talk about the word "and." As we develop product, it's really important that we figure out how to do "and." And when it comes to these things, we need to be able to fix bugs. This is something I tell my teams. This is something you need to be able to fix bugs, make small improvements, make technical behind the scenes improvements, also do small features and big new features. And we need to figure out a way to be able to do those at the same time, and that we're doing those things and we're doing fixed bugs and small improvements and big new features. And that's something we put a lot of effort into in our engineering practices, and that we're going to continue to put effort into, is to facilitate us being able to do and where that's really important is on things like fixing bugs. When you report a bug, we take that really seriously, and we try to respond on that as quickly as possible, sometimes in the same day, but oftentimes, most of the time, within a week. Those things are serious to us, and we want you to not have those experiences, and we want to fix them fast. We have this objective in our development practice where we're trying to establish a consistent, sustainable pace of development that increases in speed over time while keeping our quality high. And so I want, from our engineers and our product development people, I want an intense 40-hour work week. And then after that, I want you to enjoy the rest of your life. And I want to be able to do that in a way that's sustainable so that people don't get burned out. And we've all been in projects, we've probably all been in projects where we got a little burned out, and we're trying to avoid that and sustain. But our key is, especially when we talk about this roadmap discussion, is we want to establish a pace where there's just work getting done, new things coming out, and we're just going to continue that pace and continue to improve on it. So when we talk about roadmap, I want to clarify just some ground rules a little bit. With the roadmap, we're trying to be as transparent and open as possible. We can't share every little detail, but we are trying to share as much as we can. You may see on occasion new features pop up in the product that were not on the roadmap. And that's just because that's the nature of product development, is we may have like quickly identified a new need that needed immediate attention, and we shifted gears to be able to take care of that. When you see the roadmap, the items, as they read across the screen, left to right and down the page, they're in priority order. So when you see something in the top left corner, it's going to be done before the thing in the bottom right corner. There are no dates. This is very purposeful. I will express this strong personal opinion. Date deadlines on software development don't lead to great software. Great software is a process that needs to be worked through in order to achieve to get the thing right and get it at the right level of quality before you release it. And date deadlines mess with that. So we purposefully do our very best to avoid those. And so you won't see dates in the deadline in the roadmap. These days, the roadmap's also subject to change without notice. It's not a contract and not a commitment. It's just a forecast that we're trying to be open and share with you. And I got Hector Barbosa there quoting, it's more what you call guidelines than actual rules. It's a guideline, it's a path that we're trying to follow, and we're going to do our best. The important thing I want you to understand is that we want to be, when you hear the word agile development, that means a lot of things these days. But at its core, agile means being agile, being able to shift gears when you have new information, and being locked into a schedule that's just, we're going to do this, and that order, and not be able to change when we have a bunch of new information comes in, ties our hands and doesn't allow us to create the best experience we can. And so we purposefully allow for flexibility in our schedule so that when 5 customers come forward with like, this thing's suddenly a huge problem for us, we can shift gears and move the solution to that up in the schedule and get that up there. And we're not disrupting other things because we have flexibility in the schedule and in the plan. So that's a really important part of the roadmap. The things that go into the roadmap, the number one place that gives input into the product is our customers and what I like to call future customers, who are not with us yet, but they're coming. And we're listening to them and talking to them and you often. And we're listening to the problems that you're facing. And in particular, we're listening for struggles and difficulties you're having with the product or with the things that you're trying to accomplish with the product. And we're looking for ways that we can improve those things. And sometimes those are like, that nitty gritty feature request where I want this thing to change from that to this. And other times they're like big problems, like, how do I test my workflow? This is a pain in the neck to test the workflow. The other places we gather input is from our sales team, because they're talking to customers, and our customer success people. Our salespeople and our customer success people talk to more customers than anyone else in our company. And so I've made a point of listening to them because they are in touch with what's going on with you and what matters. And we listen to them. And then, of course, we bring forward ideas from our product development team, where they're looking at the problem, they're understanding you, they're getting to know you, getting to know the problem, and they're coming up with ideas around like, hey, we could address that like this. And oh, what if we did X? And so that type of thing comes from our product development team, and they put input in, they have input into the roadmap as well. So we're gathering input for the roadmap from all kinds of places. So our roadmap breaks down into 3 sections. There's an in progress section, and the in progress is things that are currently in design and engineering. We're actively working on these things, the things that are in progress. Up next are things that have been prioritized and they're in a schedule. They're like in an ordered schedule. We work in a Kanban way, and so they're in the Kanban board waiting to come up to the top. And then further out are things that are just not scheduled yet. They're not on the Kanban board. We're planning to do those things. We're intending to do those things. We just haven't gotten them prioritized and scheduled yet. So that's how you can break up the 3 different things. If you remember way back at the beginning of the conference, Joel introduced these 3 themes that are kind of our focus this year for the Build product. One is connecting to other systems. Another is managing the workflow process, or the business process, as it rolls out and actually executes. And the other is providing tools for governance across a large system when you have multiple departments using the product, and providing governance so that those things can be controlled and securely, and also organized and managed securely. So those 3 themes are going to be in the roadmap, and you'll see that the roadmap is color coded to these themes. And so you'll see how the roadmap maps to these things. In the roadmap, you'll see an additional color, which is the color purple, which just doesn't match these themes, but are important things that we know we need to do that have been requested by customers. And so they're in the mix there as well, that just, it's okay to do things that don't match the theme. but you should see the themes carrying through the roadmap. All right, enough about that. Let's talk about the roadmap. So the things that are currently in progress today, as we're working on providing a new screen so that the person who submits things through Build will be able to track those submissions, a screen that they can come back to and see that, oh, there's my 3 submissions, and I can see that they're still in progress or that they're complete. And I have some options there. One of the options we'll provide is a way for you to withdraw the submission so that you could say, oh, actually, I need to pull that back. I don't want that to go through the process. I need to pull it back because things change. Another option is to take a completed form and document and take it, duplicate it, and allow you to edit it and resubmit it. That addresses scenarios like the annual contract renewal for adjunct professors, where their contract's nearly identical to last year's, and it'd be nice if they could just open up a copy of last year's, make some changes, and submit it. And this facilitates that. The other item that's been long-standing request is the table gadget. The table gadget, it will allow you to have a variable data set with rows and columns embedded in the form. And so it'll address scenarios like a very common thing we've had is I want to support a variable number of attachments. And so one of the table gadget will allow you to support a variable number of attachments, because you could put a file upload gadget inside the table gadget, and then you can have a variable number of rows with each one of those rows having an attachment on it. It'll also provide it'll address a whole bunch of different scenarios that have been longstanding. We've been hearing about this and wanting to do. I've personally been wanting to do this for a very long time, and it's underway. We're getting it done. And then large group support. So we have there's a need at times to grant a very large group permissions to the systems, on the order of I want to grant 30,000 students permissions to this thing and no one else, or 20,000 faculty and no one else. And so we're working, and our system currently just doesn't support that. There's some limitations in the current groups system that prevent that. So that's an important thing that we're working on to enable us to cover those large group support, and that's being worked on now as well. Things that are coming up next. We have this thing we call the metadata gadget, which is a pretty nerdy name. But let me tell you what scenarios it addresses, because we've had lots of requests that this addresses a bunch of different requests we've been receiving. One request we've heard is, I want to be able to put I know that there's a document number that's generated when a form is submitted. I want to put that document number on the form so that people can see this is document 203. Another one we hear is, I want to put the submitted that date. I know that thing's in the system because I can see it in my columns and document lists. I want to put that on the form as a read-only field that's just automatically shown. And so there's a growing set of metadata that is data that's under the covers essentially. And the metadata gadget is going to allow you to display any part of the metadata that you want to. And so it'll be a gadget that you put on the screen, and you'll be able to choose from the metadata that's available and say, oh, I want to add that document number field into the gadget and show that here, and I'm going to place this on the form over here. So that'll address a whole set of needs that we've been hearing. Another important thing is repeating workflows on the rows in the table gadget. So this is really important. So we're going to create this table gadget, and you can put data in there. One thing you might put in there is a list of reviewers for this document, because you don't know them up front. You can't put them into the workflow up front. It's something that's determined for each document. And so the table gadget would allow you to collect the variable number of reviewers. And then this gadget inside workflow will allow you to repeat a set of workflow steps on each item in that table gadget in the form. And that will address, and that will simplify it. We have some super complex workflows out there, and this thing alone will reduce the complexity of those dramatically. And I'm really anxious to see the before and after when we see that. But we also think there's a bunch of small, simple cases where this will be really useful, but it'll allow you to work over that. Another part of that is we have multi-select gadgets, like a user multi-select or a groups multi-select. And we're going to enable this repeating capability to work against that list as well, so that you could do a workflow. If you had a groups multi-select, you could do the workflow against each of the groups and repeat that in workflow. Another item we're addressing is the ability to control access to the API integrations. Today, the API integrations are wide open to anyone who has the ability to create apps, can access any data integration that's in the system, and can connect those into those forms. That's too wide open, and we need to provide a way to control access to sensitive data. And so we'll be providing some mechanism for the administrators to be able to say, well, this is the list of our campus buildings. This one's fine. Everybody can see this one. But this other one is like student information with a student record on it. So we're only going to let a small set of applications have access to this data that are approved and validated before we allow them to use that. And so we'll have the ability to like put those types of controls on the API integrations. Another step is we've had this interesting. A lot of our schools have put in have help desk support, and they want to, when someone's having trouble building a form or someone's having trouble filling out a form, they want to be able to access help for that. And right now, there's no way for the help desk to expose help inside our product to enable that type of thing. And so we want to simplify the process so that there's a way for you to make requests to your help desk. Or make a request to the administrators of the given app that you're filling out to ask a question. And we think that'll be really helpful. And we've had lots of requests for that as well. Another item is improving user search. So our user search is nice and fast, and quick. But if you try to search on something, space something, it goes weird and it doesn't work the way you expect it to. And we need to improve that and fix that. And so that's on our list. We're getting there. Another important one that we've been wanting to do for a very long time is the ability to look up data in another build app. So for instance, today when you have the data gadgets, we have all those different data sources that are coming from API integrations. This will allow the ability for their additional data sources to come from other build apps, so that you can use another build app as a data source for a selection on a form. And then finally, for things that are up next and scheduled, is we're going to we have a bunch of work we need to do on the homepage. Garrett at Hawaii is showing us his dashboard that has 200 apps on it, and it's the beauty of success. And we need to provide some tools there and some structure there. This is taking an initial first step, which would be allowing you to tag favorites so that you can keep those at the top, and providing a search capability to make it really quick to search and find an app. But there's additional things we need to do there, and you'll see those in the further out section. So next, I got a couple slides on things that are further out that aren't scheduled yet, but are things that we're planning, that we're trying to figure out how to get scheduled. The first two are the first three are big ones. Native integrations is something that we've been needing to do for a long time, where we provide more out of the box, simplified ways for you to connect to other systems. We should make it easy for you. We should make it easy for you to connect to other quality products, and we should make it easy for you to connect to other common systems on campus. And that's what that's about, is simplifying that connection process to the other systems. SOC 2, Type 2, and HIPAA. We put a lot of effort into making our system, architecting it for security, and putting a set of practices in place that help us be secure. And we have a lot of confidence around the security in our system. We have monitoring in place that's like monitoring for intrusion and things like that. But what we don't have is third-party validation of that we're doing those things. And so that's what SOC 2 and HIPAA will do, is get a third-party validation of we're doing these things, and we have these compliance programs in place. And we think that will provide a little more comfort for many of you to have someone else validate what I say. Distributed management. So this goes to the problem we're seeing with like one place where we see it is Garrett's dashboard, where he's got 200 applications and it's just getting out of hand. And so distributed management is saying we need to solve that problem. We need to provide a way for like the history department to be able to have their set of applications and be able to manage that, which applications are their applications, but not mess with the English department's applications, and provide some sort of structure for how the applications are put together and managed, and provide and distribute the management of that structure so that the IT system administrators don't have to like manage everything. We want to distribute that management and allow the history department to be able to control and have their space. So that's an important step. We also need to do that in the groups service. Today, if you're an admin on the group service, you can change anything anywhere. And we need to be able to distribute the management of that, so that the history department can manage the assignments of the roles in their department without messing with anyone else's, that type of thing. Another one is on the form builder. We want to bring the copy, paste, undo, and redo that we have in the workflow builder. We want to bring that capability over into the form builder and match it so that it works the same. People have really liked the way that works in workflow builder, and we know you'll like it in the form builder as well. So we need to make that done. Another part of that that's kind of a really important subtitle is the workflow builder, with the way we've done it, is actually keyboard accessible. Most of you don't interact with it that way, but you could actually manage the workflow and create the entire workflow with a keyboard. And we need to do the same in the form builder. So then there's this set of the big things are the things about managing an ongoing process. So you build your form, you build your workflow, you publish it, and then people start using it, and then things get stuck. And you're like, that document's been sitting there for 3 weeks. How do I make my process work faster? How do I get things going through there faster? So one of the important things there is the ability to have delegates. And so we think of delegates in a variety of different ways. One way we think about it is the sabbatical scenario, where I'm leaving for 3 months and I want to delegate my approval process out to some different people in my organization so that they can approve certain things while I'm out on my sabbatical. Another scenario is kind of the long-standing delegation, where I say I have an administrative assistant who works with me, and I'm going to grant them approval rights for a given set of application so that they can approve on my behalf on a long-standing basis. And then the third one is ad hoc delegation, which is the scenario where you're mid-flow on a workflow and you realize, oh, there's someone else who needs to approve this that we just didn't anticipate. We need to be able to route this to someone else for review and approval, and then have it come back into the process. So we need a way to like ad hoc route it over to someplace and then come back in. And we call that an ad hoc delegate. So that's an important item that we've seen lots of requests for. Workflow timeouts is another one that we see a lot of requests for. So this is the thing of, on a given workflow step that has an approval on it, I can configure a timeout that says, after 2 days, I'm going to send a reminder to them and say, and here's what the reminder is going to say. Or maybe I do something more aggressive, like after a week, I'm going to automatically approve this thing on your behalf and move it forward in the process. It'll be configurable so that you can control a set of reminders or or a set of like helping this thing move forward. Another item we've had for a longstanding request is having a way to configure the from setting for our email notifications. Today they all come from Kuali Build, and we need to do the work to facilitate doing that in a secure, don't look like spam way. And so there's a little bit of work to do that the right way. And so that's another piece of work we want to facilitate and enable. This is a trivial little one, but it's an important one, is when you do a multi-page form, the sections are used as the titles for the table of contents on your multi-page form. And we want to give you a way to kind of override that so that you can have a long section title, but kind of an abbreviated title for the table of contents on the page form. kind of like we did for allowing you to customize the column name in the document list. So you can have a long field name, but have a short version that shows up in the document list. The other item is limiting submissions. So there's two scenarios we've been thinking about in this case. One is the scenario of I want to put this app up and I'm going to accept applications until August 10th. And then I want it to automatically shut down and put up a display message that thank you, the time is exceeded, we're no longer accepting submissions. That's one timeout. Another timeout is I want this thing to automatically turn on and be on for this 30-day window and then automatically shut off. Another one is I'm opening up the opportunity for this study abroad program, and we're going to accept the first 30 applicants. And so I can put a limit on 30 and it'll stop, and after the 30th submission, it'll stop and say, sorry, we've reached our capacity. We're no longer accepting submissions. That's what we mean by being able to put some limits on the app formation. And then this is our last screen that's further out. One is workflow instructions. So we've seen this need pretty often where you have a relatively complex form and you want to provide some instruction to the person filling out the form to say, hey, make sure you take care of X and make sure you take care of Y. And when you're filling out this, you might want to reference this URL because we have a reference over here that'll help you do that. That kind of instruction is really important. Today, you kind of work around it by using email notifications and putting instructions in those. And it'd be better to have it in place in the form. So this is an ability to somewhere in the form have a way that you could configure some instructions that would go along with the workflow. And then configurable branding. Today, branding is configured by us when we help you set up and implement. And we think you should be able to configure that yourselves. And so we'll provide that type of UI to enable that. Email address scoping is on the email gadget. It's allowing you to do things like say, I only want email addresses that end with our school's domain to be able to be put into this field, or this list of domains that we support. And then any other email address with a different domain is not valid. It allows you to, in an anonymous form, you could collect email addresses, but ask them to submit their university email address as opposed to their personal Facebook address. Another item is manual process workflow step. So despite all our best efforts, we know that there are still cases where there's a manual process. Where you go through this process and then someone has to take this thing and look up some stuff in other systems and check some things and make some human judgment on like, this is what that thing's going to be. And then they're going to come back and say, okay, I completed those tasks. I've done those things. You can continue with the workflow. I've completed the work on this workflow step. So the manual process step is about facilitating that kind of like stop, do some things that are just not automated. Or not automatable, and providing a way to facilitate that in the workflow. The other item's a relatively small little thing, but it's in our audit log where we provide a history of like all changes in the system. Being able to search by a document number in there, we think will facilitate retrieving something in there when you're trying to do an audit. And then users and groups is an important area that we need to spend more time on. In particular, the user experience needs to be improved, but there's some additional functionality we need to do there as well. And then another longstanding request has been the ability to export the current saved search in the document list. So if you're in the document list today, when you hit export, it exports the entire data set, all fields, all records, all documents, and exports the whole thing. It'd be really nice if it would export just the view that I've defined here that has these 5 columns and it's filtered to these 5 things that are in progress, and I want to export just that list. That's what this is about. It's about you've created your search and you've configured your view exactly the way you want it, and you can export that as a CSV that you could pull into another application. And then this is enabling a managed structure in the dashboard. This is specifically addressing that distributed management thing that I was talking about, but specifically around the dashboard and facilitating some sort of managed structure in the dashboard to kind of break things up instead of it being just one giant list. And then this last one's an interesting one. We found that in most cases, when you version a document, when a document goes through a workflow and it's completed and approved, you want to lock that document and have it stay the way it was done at that approval. Even if the form changes in the future, you want the form to stay the same as it was when it went through that approval process. And that's what we do today. There are circumstances though, when you want to add a new field to the form and you want that to be added to every version of the form all the way through the document list. And so this is the ability to apply a field change across all versions of the form. And it applies to scenarios where you have more of a database application, when you're spending more time like in the document list and you want to add a new column there and you want that column to have data regardless of the form version, you want data from that column to show. And so this will facilitate that type of need. We have a semi-public URL, is the way I'll say it. You can't search and find this URL. You can't navigate to it on our website, but it is available if you know the URL. And we're happy to share it with our customers and our friends. And so that is the URL. I'm posting it in chat. That's the URL where you can watch this in live, and you can come and check, and we try to keep that up to date so that you can see what's in progress and what's coming soon. And it provides a way for you to submit an idea. There's a submit idea button. You can also give feedback on a given square. You can just click on the square and allows you to, there's a rating that you can give it: important, critical, nice to have. So you can give it a rating. You can also add comments and say, hey, make sure you take care of X when you do this. Otherwise, it's not going to work for me. And we love that kind of feedback. So that's there available. Please don't share that on Twitter, but you're happy to use it in your own personal notes and reference it whenever you want to see what's coming down the road, or you have an idea that you're like, hey, I want to make sure they're thinking about this, and submit that idea to us there. That's a great place to do that. So that's our roadmap. I have one more thing I wanted to touch base on. For those of you who have multiple Kuali products, including Build, we've had a long-standing request for, hey, why doesn't feature X in CM? Why can't I see that feature over on Build? And why can't I see feature Y in Build over in Research? And that we've been listening to that. And that has not been an explicit focused goal for a little while. And we have recently changed that. And we are now making it a very explicit, purposeful goal to share code between our applications much more significantly than we have in the past. My hope personally is that a day will come when you see a workflow screen in a Kuali product, it will look really similar or identical. And that when you build a form, it'll be very similar and work very similarly to each other. There may be an occasional difference that we tune uniquely to an experience, but we want to have a lot more consistency between those experiences and a lot more efficiency between the amount of code that we write. And I just want to share with you that we've heard that, we've listened, and we are aggressively changing our focus on that and explicitly focusing on sharing that environment. That's going to take a while for those things to actually show up. But if you'll be patient with us, you will start to see things change in a significant way in the coming years. And that's one significant change we've made that I really can't point to anything specifically, but it's something that's in the works that you'll start to see things in the coming. This is years of work to make this work, but give us time, and great things are afoot. All right. So that's everything I had. We've got a few more minutes. I just wanted to open it up for questions, answers, comments, rants, raves, if you have something you want to say, I'd like to hear it and I'd like to understand it. And if there's something that like, you're missing X on the roadmap, why are you not thinking about it? What's the matter with you, Tad? I absolutely want to hear those things. What are the things that are missing? And please, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Can I ask a question about something I noticed was not in this roadmap?
Yes, please.
So I have played with the advanced integrations, which is now being referred to as Lasso. Its exclusion from this leads me to believe this is going to be a separate product. Is that premature thinking on my part?
No, that's probably more in line with what we're thinking there, that it's an add-on or separate product. We don't have that totally sorted out, which is why I don't have it on the roadmap. But we're still early days on that, I guess is the way I'd say it. I'm trying to figure out how to what the best way is to position that. But it's likely an add-on or a separate product that would connect into the system. But thanks for that question. That's we want that to be understood. And I have no idea what the price would be. We're way early on this. We're in the let's build something cool that solves a problem phase right now, and then we'll quickly move into, okay, how do we get this out and make it into what it needs to be. So Jill offers a suggestion that they'd love to see some more detailed text formatting options, more so than just normal, large, and huge. That's a good thought. We'll add that into the list of things to consider. That's a great point. So Kristen pointed out, H1, H2, H3, and helps support accessibility. And yeah, we currently don't provide a way to do that. JD has a thought.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if you could go a little more into detail around the native integrations. So, for example, would you consider things like Google Sheets integration or other campus tools like in that class to be in the native integrations wheelhouse? And the reason I ask is one of the more common integration requests that we get is, hey, can you make these Kuali build submissions go to a Google Sheet, or can you make it go to a Smart Sheet because some other process occurs over there? And we try to pull people back from that and say, well, you could use the documents list, and that's often true, but not always the end result. Not always able to dissuade them. So, is that part of the scope of what that feature is going to wind up being?
Absolutely. In fact, Google Sheets and Excel Sheets on Excel 360 are probably two of the first we'll do, two of the earliest ones that we'll do. They're just used so commonly in so many work items across campus that's a great place for us to start. And when I refer to common higher ed systems, those things are part of the system these days.
Yeah. Very cool. Thanks.
So
yes.
As others think about hard things to add to the list, let me do a quick shout out to you and your team. Really good job. Love the work and the attentiveness to detail as well as response. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Garrett. Appreciate that. So you're telling me my roadmap's nearly perfect? There's like no improvement we can make to it? Nothing?
Tad Lindy is also asking about Salesforce. She says Salesforce 2.
Oh, Salesforce would absolutely be on the short list of some of the first ones that we would do. Absolutely. That we know Salesforce is in heavy use across campuses.
Yeah, I've got a question. One thing that we'd like to do is to be able to pre-populate forms and then have the forms sent out. So for example, with student housing, we have occupancy record forms. So when a student checks in, they have to complete a form and then return the form. So we'd like to be able to like pre-populate the student name, the room number, and so forth. Have that sent out to them. They would then approve and then send back to us. I'm not sure if you can do that now or if that's a roadmap item.
Actually, I think you might be able to do that today. So you could have the original submitter be, you know, an administrator who fills in that information or starts the form, has it autofill, and then submit it. And the first person it'll go to is that student, and they would see the information, and you could prompt them to add your information here and please approve to continue.
Yeah, we'd actually like that to be automated, so the data from our system populates the form and then it just goes out
Yeah.
without us needing to fill in 3,000 individual forms manually.
In
Nice.
theory, that could be done with the GraphQL API
Okay.
by
Yes.
originating a document and filling in the values that way.
That's right. So programmatically, you could do that through the GraphQL API. You could reference an existing form and fill out data in it, and then submit it into a workflow process. Yeah. We actually have, I've seen that two or three customers have done that, where they've automated the initial submission of the form for different scenarios. So that programmatically that could be done, so that you could automate it and connect it into another system. And if you want to get help with that, contact us, and we can give you a little help.
Tad, there was a question that came up earlier in the week about having approvals where they didn't really like the verbiage of approval. So it was, you know, in the workflow, somebody needs to do something, you know, whether it's updating a spreadsheet or do something else, and then they want to say they're done. And you talked about maybe letting them customize the what's on the button, but actually your manual workflow step is really what that is.
I think it might be. So the thought is that the manual workflow step could be pretty configurable.
They need to do something, and the button could just be complete, or because it's when somebody needs to perform some action, and then they need to signify when they've finished it. So you could probably come up with a name on the button that would take care of that they wouldn't have to, you wouldn't have to make it customizable necessarily, right? Whether it's submit or complete. I think you could probably pick something and just let that be, like I say, let that be another type of step that you planned on doing, right? A manual step. But in this case, you know, it's not that somebody has to go do something in another system necessarily. They just have something they need to do, and they don't want to say, oh, I approve it, right? They, like they said, I'm not an approver. I don't, you know, so they object to you making it be an approval step. It is really that manual step. So it's in your roadmap already. It just might, you didn't think of it when you were, you know, talking about customizing the buttons.
You're right. No, it's a good thought. That's that word approve. It works a lot of the time, but we've got to cover some more scenarios there. I want to highlight a couple of things that came through the chat. There's a discussion around being able to total up fields or do math between fields. That's definitely on our radar. It needs to get into the roadmap. We hear requests for that, for different versions of that question pretty often. The initial table gadget won't have math support in it, but I know you'll want it. And so we're going to work on our math skills, and we got to figure that one out. And there's a reference to being able to migrate an app from a sandbox or stage environment into the production environment. We need to take another look at that one. There's some complexity to that, but we need to look at it. So, because there's ways to do that with some caveats because of the way our systems work. So Davidson actually automated the process themselves using our APIs, and but they clarify the caveats that, you know, some of these things are going to break in the thing. If you have a reference to a group, it'll break if you move it in from one environment to the other, because the groups are different between the two environments.
Same with integrations as well.
Yeah, integrations are the same, but it would still be helpful if you could migrate, you know, that big long form design, and then be able to fix it in the production environment before you publish it. That's something we need to look at.
Well,
So if I'm-
actually, you could think about just finding out those things that can break because of their, their references to things that are different in different environments. That's similar to what, we run into in regular applications. And so the way it's solved there is like configuration files. So you make it the responsibility of the people to say, instead of specifying it here, I'll make a reference to a configuration where it'll specify by environment what it should use.
Oh,
So
interesting.
if you can think of something similar, that it has to be simple enough, right? You got to simplify the user interface, but it's that idea that there's some place where a user needs to be able to specify, in this environment, it's this, in this environment, it's this, in this environment, it's this, and then have it work because when you migrate from sandbox to production, you want to be able to make a change in sandbox, test it, and then migrate it. You don't want to have to go fix it. It should just work. And the way to do that would be to, like I say, parameterize those things that are different in different environments.
Yeah.
It's a solvable problem, although to me, it's more a problem of the complexity of the user interface than anything else. And with needing to keep it a simple interface, we don't want to complicate things. So now it's not a no code environment, right? Now it's for developers. You don't want to do that. So you got to think of a way to make it seem simple.
Yep. No, those are good thoughts. Yeah, you're right. It is doable. But yeah, we'll need to think about that. That has been a consistent request. One more question. I think we're out of time. Kristen mentions that she'd like to be able to put the form on a website. If I'm following, you'd like to embed the form inside a website. We've seen that request. There's some security implications to doing that, and we have to do that really carefully. But it's something we need to think about, because we do get that request, and people do want to do those things. But we have to be careful about security. That's lots of bad things can happen if you don't do those things right. Well, I think that's our time. I want to thank you again for participating with us this week. It's been great. I love Kuali Days, and this one's been really different, but I've enjoyed it none the same. And it's been a great time spending time with you. Love seeing you all and getting to know you. And I'm looking forward to more great stuff happening this year. Thank you for all your time with us.